Pascal was feverish about the implications. Okay, so this is from How Minds Change. We're on page 79 and 80. And we're going to read 2 pages. But first, I just have to give you the experiment that it's all based on. So basically, after the dress happened, right, that's 2015, you've got this dress, and people are like, it's this color. And other people are like, it's this color. And it was a weird experience for everybody. It says here, they had created, oh, now they're talking about the experimenters who did an experiment inspired by this. They had created from scratch something that before that moment only appeared in nature in about 1 in 10 billion photographs, the dress being one of the natural occurrences. Okay, so here's what they did. They thought about some objects and stuff that either have color associations or don't, and they came up with socks and Crocs. That's what this chapter is called, socks and Crocs. They're like, okay, yeah, so socks, a lot of people are maybe going to see them as white. And then Crocs, maybe people don't really have a particular color that comes to mind when they think of Crocs. They just think of the shape, and they're as easily able to imagine one color as another. So here's what they did. The experimenters, Pascal and Karlovich, you brought some pink Crocs, went into a grow house, where you grow the good stuff. So there are green lights, because this is what had inspired their experiment, one of them being in a grow house. So they've got some green lights shining on a pair of white socks and pink Crocs. So there's one of the experimenters, Pascal or Karlovich, is walking around with photographs being taken of him by the other, and he's wearing these white socks and pink Crocs. Okay. So then what they did, of course, was they had the green lights, the grow lights that are shining on this thing. Okay. And then they showed a photo of Pascal in these Crocs and socks with this green light being shined on him, and to people, and we're like, "Yo, what color are the Crocs?" All right. So there were 2 answers given. Older people tended to say, "Well, the socks are white." And the Crocs are pink. Younger people, because apparently they're more used to seeing colored socks, were like, the socks are green as they appear in the photo, and so the Crocs are gray, because the pink Crocs appeared gray under the green light. All right. So they had done it. They had their nuclear bomb. They had created from scratch something that before that moment only appeared in nature in about 1 in 10 billion photographs. Right, so the results, it worked exactly as they thought it would. Some people saw gray Crocs and green socks, and others saw pink Crocs and white socks. Like with the dress, if subjects saw it one way, they couldn't see it the other. And then older people were more likely to see the Crocs as pink, and younger people were more likely to see them as gray. And basically, of course, by the way, if you don't know about the explanation about color perception, all that for the dress, remember actually when I read it back in 2015, I didn't understand it. But I do now, so if you don't understand it, I'll explain it. Basically, so you have, so the dress was black and blue. No, I'm not going to explain it for the dress, because I think it was more confusing. So you have white socks and pink Crocs. Okay, picture that. A guy wearing white socks and pink Crocs. Okay. Now we shine a green light on that, and the pink Crocs absorb that green light. They don't send it back. And there's no red light or pink light being sent, because this isn't under a white light. It's under green light. So there's no pink light that can be reflected back. And then since the pink absorbs the green, since the, gosh, am I messing this up? Then, anyway, it comes out as gray. Okay. At this point, the brain has 2 options to disambiguate. One option, that's not good. Shit, this is plugged in, this can't be running. Hold on. Okay. One option is that the brain goes, yo, socks are white. So those socks appear white, which means that if they're appearing green, that's because there's a green light hitting it. Okay, now the Crocs appear gray, but we know it's under a green light. So the Crocs must be pink. Not that you really have access to that. Most of your brain couldn't really tell what the colors are and so on, but just the way that we're wired, we are able to go, oh, obviously if it's gray under a green light, obviously that means it's pink, and then we will just perceive it as pink. And that's how the experiment started, because okay, I'll read this explanation too. We're back to page 76 now. Karlovich explained that green plants absorb most of the wavelengths of visible light, but reflect back some of the ones that the brain interprets as green, which bounce back into the eyes. So if you use a green light of a specific wavelength to grow them, green plants react as if they were in darkness. Green plants can't see green. That way you can work under green lights during an artificial nighttime without disturbing the plant's circadian rhythms. He had been hanging out with someone doing just that when he noticed something unusual. His friend was wearing Crocs that Karlovich assumed were gray because they appeared gray under the green grow house lights. But outside in the sunlight, they appeared pink. The weird thing, the thing that boggled his mind, was that when they went back inside, they now looked pink. He could no longer see them the way he had just minutes before, and they never switched back. As a color scientist, he had a solid guess as to what was happening. If you illuminate pink Crocs in only green light, they will appear gray. That's because they aren't bouncing back any pink light. Under sunlight, though, which contains pink wavelengths, you see their true color. The fact that the Crocs didn't go back to gray in his mind when he went back inside the grow house meant that although objective reality hadn't changed, his subjective reality had. Okay, that's enough of that. Now, let's read the part that I got excited about. The reason I had to record this before I could continue reading. All right, page 79. Pascal spent the better half of my... Oh, sorry, yeah. You know what? Maybe I should read about the disambiguating thing. Okay, this was the idea. If they got some, page 77, if they got some pink Crocs and paired them with white socks, then illuminated both with green light, the Crocs would appear gray, like they had in the grow house, but the socks would reflect the green light back and appear green. If you thought the socks had been, this whole thing is a tongue twister. If you thought the socks had been dyed green, you would surmise nothing was amiss with the lighting and accept the image without editing it. However, if you expected the socks to be white and saw them as such, your brain, without its knowledge, without the rest, I made a video where I didn't like how they say without your knowledge. However, if you expected the socks to be white and saw them as such, your brain, without your knowledge, would then edit the image by subtracting the green tinted overexposure while adding back the pink hues to the shoes. Okay, all right, now let's get to the important part. Pascal spent the better half of my final afternoon with him and Karlovich running through why what they proved with socks and Crocs was vital to understanding how and why people do and do not change their minds when presented with evidence alone. They believe it literally sheds light on other kinds of polarized disagreements surrounding politics, conspiracy theories, current events, and science denial. There are more than 30 steps in visual processing before an image reaches consciousness, Pascal said. You are only aware of the result, not the processes. And this is really important. We can replace you with maybe other mechanisms, but that's so important. And that's what I often say, is that there's no trace kept of the activity, the mechanisms by which we arrived at a conclusion. We just have the result. We don't experience, the brain doesn't really experience the construction process. There are parts of it that construct an image, but that's not experienced by the brain as a whole, or whatever, by consciousness. Okay, so rereading. There are more than 30 steps in visual processing before an image reaches consciousness, Pascal said. You are only aware of the result, not the processes. At no point in processing the image of the dress did anyone feel the uncertainty that led to their disambiguation. Okay, so there was at some point with the eyes were like, oh, hey, I'm not sure quite what I'm looking at or what to send up. So then they disambiguated. But we don't experience that uncertainty. There is not a mechanism in the brain that's like, oh, hey, I'm not really feeling sure about this. There's no feeling of uncertainty. There is no uncertainty, really. And objectively, there is... Oh, that's an interesting way to put it. In order for uncertainty to exist, it's not just the lack of certainty. There has to be a mechanism that produces the feeling of uncertainty. If you bypass that, or if a process happens before that level of the brain, then there can be something unknown without feeling any uncertainty. And then those mechanisms, those lower level mechanisms, disambiguate. There's something unknown, so it's like, all right, well, this is the case. And then, of course, you're not going to feel any uncertainty. The uncertainty mechanism never needed to run. Can you imagine every time we were looking at something? Most of the time when we look at things, we're able to very quickly sort of feel like we know what we're looking at. I don't feel confused as I'm like looking around like this. Like, oh shit, hold on, where's the tree and where's the bush end or whatever, right? So obviously there's always an interpretation process that there's only needs to trigger the uncertainty mechanism if that interpretation process is really, really failing, maybe. Okay, so at no point in processing the image of the dress did anyone feel the uncertainty that led to the disambiguation. How we'll rephrase that is, did any uncertainty mechanism run before the disambiguation happened? It's the fact that uncertainty is eliminated so stealthily. Obviously, our understanding is a little bit different. It's the fact that uncertainty is eliminated so stealthily that these processes are both unconscious and undebatable. It's this fact that leads to our most intractable disputes. When our differing experiences and motivations cause us to disambiguate differently, we can't help but disagree with great certainty. But when we disagree in this way, we don't know why we are disagreeing. The result is that we argue endlessly over our subjectivity to convince one another of something that doesn't feel subjective. It feels like the raw, unfiltered, unassailable truth. I gotta pause you. When I first started... So I've been sort of reading about the brain for a long time, but it was in about maybe, I don't know, between 2014 and 2016 that I was doing a lot of thinking about, actually, because I did a presentation on it in 2015. Yeah, so between reading Thinking Fast and Slow in 2014. Hello.
Mira.
¿Qué es eso?
Oh.
¿Qué es eso?
¿Alubias?
Sí, pero ¿por qué me da eso?
Porque, no sé, las he visto ahí y yo muchas veces me las llevo.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Do you free time?
Yes, I just have to... let me finish this video. Hago una video ahora.
Okay.
Estoy haciendo una video.
Estoy haciendo.
Estoy haciendo una video.
Un video.
Exacto.
Okay.
Entonces...
I wait.
¿Sí?
¿Me espero fuera o dentro?
Adentro, sí.
Vale.
Neo, venga.
Neo. Sorry.
No worries. No pasa nada. So I was thinking about... All right. It doesn't matter the whole timeline. The point is that in 26... What was I thinking about earlier today? What did we just read? Oh, yeah, I remember I was at a bar. And this guy said to me that he would... I don't remember why, but he was something... Oh, he had a piece of cake. And I was like, yo, is that for everybody? And he was like, I'll give it to you if you tell me something I don't already know. And at this point, I thought it was a really important thing. Things aren't necessarily true just because they feel that they're true. And I thought that was like a really powerful and important thing to understand. He was like, I already know that. And I get how people who think that they're reasonable think that they sort of already know that. Because what happens is they don't think that the reason they're so compelled by a certain belief is just because it feels right. They think that they've got all of the reasons. But what I'm saying is that's part of just that feeling that I'm talking about. So no matter how confident you are, no matter how many justifications you feel that you have, no matter how many justifications you can list that feel correct, you still might be wrong. And I really don't think that people understand that. Continuing. Okay, in psychology, there's a term for this cognitive blind spot, for when your disambiguations feel undeniably true. It's called naive realism, and it's the belief that you perceive the world as it truly is, free from assumption, interpretation, bias, or the limitations of your senses. The late psychologist Lee Ross, who helped popularize the term, told me that it leads many of us to believe we arrived at our beliefs, attitudes, and values after careful, rational analysis through unmediated thoughts and perceptions. Unaware that different priors can lead to different disambiguations, you believe you've been mainlining pure reality for years, and it was your intense study of the bare facts that naturally led to all of your conclusions. According to Ross, this is why people on one side of any debate believe their side is the only one rooted in reality. All right, we'll stop there. But so this harkens back to, or this sort of should echo or remind you of the video I made yesterday, in which I said part of the, once you realize that you're a brain and stuff, part of the process is shutting the fuck up and not just going back and forth, as though you were reasonable.